it says, the occupational activities a man or woman perform according to his or her own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction from the message of the personality of Godhead. So, in the purport, Prabhupada will compare three types of people. One is the gross materialist, second is the mental speculators, and the third is the devotee. So, what does he say? He says that the gross materialists cannot see beyond the gross material body and senses. That is, they believe, I am this body. And this is like over 99% of the whole population of the world believes, I am this body. My identity is not independent of this body. So they don't understand the difference between the soul and the body. Do me a favor, look up on the internet the Christian idea of the spirit and the soul. They're different, according to the Christians. Yes. So, in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, after Arjuna surrenders to Krishna, then Krishna begins to instruct him. Before Arjuna surrendered, Krishna did not really instruct him. And before Arjuna accepted Krishna as his spiritual master, Krishna did not really instruct him. But when he surrendered, in the first chapter, and actually in the second chapter, when he says, Sisyasteham sadimam tvam pranan, I want to become your disciple. Please instruct me. I do not know what I'm doing. I'm confused, etc. Sisyasteham sadimam tvam prapanyam. So, Krishna begins by saying, those who are wise lament neither for the body, for the living nor the dead. He begins like that. So, why does he say that? That might sound a little harsh to some people. But actually, if you understand that the soul is eternal, then there's no real death. It's simply death of the covering of the soul. Like, for example, when there's a nice shirt that you like or a dress that you like, and then it gets torn and gets old, and you have to throw it away or give it away, do you lament? Huh? Do you start crying and saying, oh, I can't live without this? No. No, it's a temporary thing. You know that when you buy it, you know it's a temporary thing. Even a wedding dress, you might keep it for 1 or 2 or 3 generations. Eventually, maybe the moths eat it or bugs eat it, or you don't know why you're keeping it. Some great-grandmother had it, so you give it away to Goodwill or somebody. And you don't lament. Maybe the first generation would have lamented. The second generation may have lamented. Third generation, not so important. Fourth generation, I give it away. They say, well, why are we keeping this? Or people are dying and they empty the house. Some new person is going to move into the house, and they throw everything away. It's all junk. So why would we lament when the body dies? Because it's destined to die, and it's not the real person. But if you think the body is the real person, then you will lament. You'll say, oh, we'll never see this person again, blah, blah, blah. Right? So here he's saying, the gross materialists cannot see beyond the gross material body and senses. And all their activities are limited to concentrated and extended selfishness. Now, this is a really important point. What is concentrated and extended selfishness? Well, Prabhupada explains, concentrated selfishness centers around the personal body. This is the case of lower animals also. They're interested in their body. The cat's licking its paws. The dog is licking its butt, They often lick their butt, and then they come and they lick the master also with their butt juices. And people say, "Oh, he loves me. Ah, he's spreading his germs on you." Yeah, that's what it is. It's not an act of love. It's germ spreading, And then they sleep with the dog in the bed, and all the worms and germs from the anus of the dog come out into your bed sheets, right? So this is love. Love the dog. Hate the cow. Eat the cow. Love the dog. You see, people got it backwards. So this is the case. Concentrated selfishness centers around the personal body. This is the case of lower animals and human beings. Human beings are, they're spending so much money, to get plastic surgery. They get Botox. They get this thing, that thing. We don't want to go through all the list of horrible things they do to themselves. And then extended selfishness is manifested more in human society, such as family, society, community, nation, and the world. And this is all occupational duties that are either concentrated selfishness or extended selfishness. Why? Because people can't see beyond the gross body and senses. And then there's a second class of people who are engaged in occupational duties, right? This verse is, the occupational duties a person performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction from the message of the personality of Godhead. So now you have the mental speculators. They're preoccupied with mental spheres. And spheres like some space, in ethereal space, right? And basically it means mental flights of speculation. So the mental flights of speculation, you'll see this written in books of theoretical physicists and sociologists and archaeologists. They're all speculation, but very intelligently done, right? They make poetry, philosophy, propagate some ism with the aim of selfishness limited to the body and mind. So that is perfect explanation of communism, socialism, capitalism, anarchism, monarchism, all the isms, and all the other isms there are, existentialism, and this ism and that ism. They're all isms. They're all flights of speculation. And above the body and mind is the dormant spirit soul. So less intelligent people. Why does it say dormant? Because the person is so involved in bodily attachment that they're not doing anything for their soul. So basically, the soul is being ignored. And then, so above the body and mind is the dormant soul. Less intelligent people have no information about the needs of the soul. They're only concerned about the needs of the body and the mind. So you have doctors and you have psychologists and so forth. So one takes care of the body, one takes care of the mind. Is there anyone that's taking care of the soul? No. Do they teach anything about the soul in schools? No. Maybe in religious schools, but not the regular schools. Why? Do they teach anything about God in the regular school? No. They're not allowed to. They can do it in a cultural way, they'll invite some American Indian to come in and go, hoo, 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 and talk about the gods and this and that, and, it's cultural, but it's not anything substantial knowledge of the soul. So, foolish people are not satisfied with their mundane occupational duties because all their duties are concerned with the body, not with the soul. So you'll see someone say, well, I work in Microsoft. I don't really like the work. I'm thinking of changing my company. And they work in the other company and say, well, I thought Microsoft was bad. This other one is even worse. And then they say, well, it's living in America, it's too competitive. And I go back to India. They go back to India and they say, wow, it's become just as competitive here, if not more, than America. Maybe I'll go back to America because Americans are stupid. They don't learn anything anymore in school. So I have a better chance of competing there. So You see, they're never satisfied wherever they go. There's always some reason to be this. Why? Because they're doing nothing for the soul. They're just doing things for the body and the mind. And so the foolish people are not satisfied with their mundane occupational duties. The soul is beyond the gross body and mind. One cannot be happy by sense gratification of the body or mind because they're temporary. The body and mind are temporary. They're not going to last forever. So the need of the soul is to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire for complete freedom. He ultimately, a person ultimately wants complete freedom, and by which they can exchange unlimited love and devotion for Lord Krishna. So the mental speculators, they speculate so good that they eliminate Krishna. And they perceive that the ultimate state is called Brahman, where there's no personality, no activity. It's some kind of static state where there's just energy. So they have no knowledge of Vaikuntha, Goloka. I mean, they hear about it, but they think it's all mythological. But there's a higher state called Brahman where there's no activity, there's no thought, there's just being. Right? So that is like ultimate stupidity and ignorance. They lock themselves into a mental box of speculation. See? And because of that, they refuse to accept that there is Vaikuntha, there's Goloka, there's Krishna, there's cowherd boys, there's eternal bliss. They refuse to accept it. They're such good speculators. They speculate out the whole spiritual world and Krishna. And they want you to end up in a no man's land where there's no activity. There's no thought. There's just being in energy. You see how dumb they are? If you actually think about what they're explaining to be the ultimate state, it is very, very ignorant. And they just consider Krishna as just mythology. It's not real. It's just, it's good for comic books, but it's not, not substantial, like meditating on the imperceptible oneness. But how can you meditate on imperceptible oneness? Right? Just think about it. Something is imperceptible, and it's one, meaning there's nothing there. It's the same thing over and over again, right? So it's a dead end. So, however, now, Prabhupada, the third point, I have to correct my notes a little bit. I only had two categories. This third category, Prabhupada says, the soul is beyond the gross body and mind. One cannot be happy by sense gratification of the body and mind, which are temporary. The need of the soul is to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire, the desire of the soul for complete freedom. He ultimately wants complete freedom by which he can exchange unlimited love and devotion with Lord Krishna and devotees. So, is this true? Well, think about it. Do you want complete freedom? Right? No more fetters, no more limits, right? That's called the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is when length, width, and breadth and width extend infinitely. So here, everything length, width, and breadth and width, length, width, and height are limited. But there's a fourth dimension where they're not limited. They're unlimited. And then the fifth dimension, there's unlimited love and ecstasy. So that a reasonable person would say, that's what I want. That's exactly what I want. But if you become a Mayavadi, they say, no, that's all nonsense. There's just energy. That's it. But energy and no personality and no work, no relationship, that's like hell, really. But the spiritual world, where there's infinite number of wonderful devotees and Krishna and unlimited pastimes with the Lord, and no birth, no death, no old age, no disease, no demons. They only hear about the demons, but there are no demons there. So, who would not want that? Only someone who's crazy. Now, Prabhupada says, there's dormant affection for Krishna within everyone. Why? We were originally with Krishna. We did love Krishna at one time, but we got, as we say in English, bamboozled by Maya. We chose to separate ourselves from Krishna and come to the world where we're struggling all the time. And there's competition, and there's old age, there's disease, there's death, there's, war. There's so many things are happening, windstorms and earthquakes and tsunamis and floods and bugs and diseases, and all these things are happening to us. Just like one man came to me yesterday. He had tears in his eyes. He said, my son was just diagnosed with leukemia, it's blood cancer. He's only 6 years old. I said, what am I going to do? So, yeah, what are you going to do, right? I know many people whose children got leukemia. They took them to the doctors. The doctors started using chemotherapy. After that was over, they used radiation. After that was over, the kid was finished. Right? So just imagine how devastating it is. Your kid is only 5 or 6 years old, and they're diagnosed with leukemia. It was a blood cancer. It's very difficult to get rid of. But there's hope. Anyway, in illusion, people express perverted affection for gross and subtle matter. To correct this, people need to engage in hearing and chanting about the Supreme Lord Krishna. So, this is the decision a devotee makes. The devotee decides, hey, I've heard and I've studied so much nonsense, and it hasn't really made me happy. I mean, it made me money. It made me a possessor of things, but I'm not really happy with what I'm doing. So therefore, let me try this. Harivilas keeps saying this. Actually, he's only repeating what Prabhupada says. He's not making it up. That to correct this, correct what? The perverted affection for gross and subtle matters. So Prabhupada's saying, originally we all have love for Krishna, but now we have perverted affection for gross and subtle matter, for cars, and then for some ism, some philosophy, Just like one fool says, I haven't come here to tell you that I am God. I have come here to tell you that you are God. And people say, oh, wow, this guy's really right on the money. You say, so, he's only feeding the false ego, Actually, you'll end up believing that he is God, but in the meantime, you think he's going to make me God. I didn't realize I was God. So you see, the whole thing is cheating. It has no factual basis based on Shastra or And here Prabhupada's saying, in illusion, people express perverted affection for gross and subtle matter. To correct this, people need to engage in hearing and chanting about the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. And that is what Bhagavatam is. Bhagavatam does not deal with any other subject except Krishna. That's why it's the summum bonum, or the supreme absolute truth. There's nothing superior to this. Nothing that comes close to it, in fact. Right? So if the sages in Naimisharanya listened to it for 1,000 years from Sutta Goswami, how long do you think we should listen to it? They listened 1,000 years. Right? 1,000 years before Kali Yuga began, they knew it was coming, and they wanted to know what they could do to help the people. So it was to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And they sat there for 1,000 years discussing it. That's how profound it is. And still there were new realizations coming all the time. So, any occupational activity which does not help one to achieve attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead, is said herein to be simply a waste of time. So, let me ask you a question. If you go to Disneyland, do you develop a stronger desire to hear Bhagavatam? Huh? What's the answer? No. If anything, you lose your desire to hear Bhagavatam. Now you're involved with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Dumbo and Snoopy Dog and, and then, you buy these, you buy a Dumbo and you buy, because you kids say, I want to have a Dumbo, instead of saying, I want to have deities of Radha Krishna. No, I want to have Dumbo and put it on my bed and meditate on it all day and night. Hey, you see, this is crazy. And here it's saying, any duty or any activity which does not help one to achieve attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead is said herein in this verse, 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, verse 8, spoken by Sukadeva Goswami, to be simply a waste of time. This is because other occupational duties, whatever ism they may belong to, cannot give liberation to the soul. So, what are we actually trying to do? We're trying to liberate ourselves from this, what you would call not only a dead end, but this morass. The morass is a big, dark hole, and when you go in it, you get stuck. Can't get out. So from this morass of ignorance that we're living in every day. Or as they say, as Prahlad Maharaj says, it's griham andakupam. So he compares mundane life to andakupam, a dark well or a dark cave, and we're stuck in that dark cave. It's dank. There's bat stool all over the place, and there's gaseous smells, and might be snakes and all kinds of bacteria and things, And he describes life in the material world as living in andakupam, a dark cave. So, in this waste of time, this is because other occupational duties, whatever ism they may belong to, cannot give liberation to the soul. Even the activities of the salvationists are considered to be useless. The salvationists are the people declaring that, if you do this puja or that puja, you'll be elevated to higher planets. Or if you meditate on nothing or meditate on the light, then you will attain eternity in the light, right? And it says here, this is considered to be useless because of their failure to pick up the fountainhead of all liberties. What is the fountainhead of all liberties? Krishna. Okay. He's called Mukunda, the giver of liberation. The gross materialist can practically see that his material gain is limited only to time and space. And this is why people want to become immortal by getting frozen or by getting a robot that looks like them and downloading their brain into it, or by using nanotechnology to go through every one of your veins and arteries and capillaries and sniff out the germs. Yeah, they have this nanoparticle that goes and kills things in your body. If it kills too much, you're dead, by the way. So either in this world or in the other. In other words, all this material gain is limited to time and space. Even if he goes up to the Swargaloka, he will find no permanent abode for the hankering soul. So this is the reality. And what is the solution? To develop this ardent desire to hear and chant the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the only subject is Krishna. That's it. This is what the sages heard for 1,000 years, and they didn't get tired of it. They'd say, "Oh, I'm bored. Oh, this is terrible. I'm going to go play a video game or something. I'm bored." And no, they were excited. Maharaj Pariksit, 7 days, he didn't even eat or drink. He was so enthralled by hearing Bhagavatam. Okay, so that's verse number 8. And then verse number 9, Dharma sehiya pavargasya narto ritayo pakalpate nartasya dharmakamtikasya kamo labayahi smrita. It's a very nice verse, again, often quoted by Prabhupada. All occupational duties, dharmasya, are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Well, try and explain that to all these rich guys. They would say, are you crazy? Why I work so hard to make all this money? I can't use it for sense gratification? No, you're not allowed to. You'll get karmic reactions if you do. But they don't care. They don't really care. See, that's how irresponsible and how much an illusion they are. They don't really care. And if we look at Bhagavad Gita, you'll see in the 5th chapter, Prabhupada says something very profound. 5th chapter, verse, what is it? He says that one who works with material attachment becomes entangled, and one who works simply to please Krishna becomes liberated. So this entanglement is a very horrible thing, because it means we remain in a cycle of repeated birth and death. So he says in 5th chapter, verse number 22, the verse says that an intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, the last line of the purport, the more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. Now, most people would not accept this statement. What do you mean? The more I have material pleasure, the more I'm going to suffer? That's nonsense. You're trying to scare me to give up my material pleasures. But no, it's a law of nature. Just like there's a law of gravity. What goes up comes down. This is also a law of nature. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. And I'll give you a real example. Recently, 2 people came to see me, and it was a Muslim lady and a Brahmin boy, or man, right? And the lady was married to somebody, but they were in a relationship, and the lady was in the process of getting the divorce because apparently her husband cheated on her. And they said that we feel guilty. I said, why do you feel guilty? Well, you know, the lady's a Muslim, the boy is a Brahmin, and we feel like it's sinful. I said, that's not sinful. That's not a sin. But, I said, there are 4 pillars of sin. There's meat eating, gambling, intoxication, and illicit activities outside of marriage. So if you have done any one of those 4 things, that's what's making you feel guilty. So they remained silent. And then they opened up. They were having a physical relationship. I said, well, that's very, very sinful. He said, what, is there any way we can atone for it? I said, yeah, but don't talk about atonement right now. Talk about whether, if you are excused by Krishna, will you do it again? Talk about that. Because if you ask for atonement and Krishna's mercy comes to you and you do it again, it's even worse. I said, already what you've done is really bad. I mean, the karmic reaction for a man who takes advantage of a woman who's married is extremely, extremely bad. In other words, it's destructive in the worst category. And Prabhupada explains that's one of the worst sins a person can commit. So I said, already what you've done is really bad. I said, I don't want to tell you more about it. It'll just scare the heck out of you. But if you read the Brahma Samhita, the Manu Samhita, you'll see that that's one of the worst sins for which you will suffer terribly. Worse than killing someone. Look what happened to Ravana, right? He kidnaps Sita Devi. He wasn't able to defile her because there was a curse on him, but it ruined everything. He had everything you can imagine. He lost everything. Right? And everyone who followed him, they were also ruined. That's how devastating it is. Okay? So he was really shaken by that, because he's a Brahmin boy, right? So, but here, the more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he's entrapped by material miseries. Write this down. Look at it every day. Right? Let me read it one more time. It's the last line of the purport, 5:22, Bhagavad Gita. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. This is a law of nature. Right? Okay, so that's why it says here that all occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. In other words, if you have a human body, let's say you had a dog's body, this verse would not refer to you, would not be pertinent, or germane, as they say in English, to you. It would have no reference to you. But if we have human body, this verse is not only germane, it is of utmost essential importance. If we have material bodies, then all our occupational engagements are meant for ultimate liberation. We shouldn't waste even 1 second on doing nonsense. That's how serious the human life is. They should never be performed, duties should never be performed for material gain. But wait a minute, everybody's working for material gain. Look at Zuckerberg, right? Everything he's doing is material gain. Look at Bezos. Everything he's doing is for material gain. In fact, he just committed the worst sin possible. He's defiling a woman who's married to somebody else. The worst sin. Imagine what his future is going to be like. Now, you can note what I said on May 9th, 2019, right? I made a statement about anyone who does this, giving the example of Ravana. So let's see if this is real or not. Let's see what happens to Bezos in the future. These things don't happen right away, but over time they happen, right? So, many people believe, including even followers of religion, that material gain is the goal of life. Everyone will agree to that, right? No one would disagree to that. The general tendency of any ordinary man in any part of the world is to gain some material profit in exchange for religious or any other occupational service. So if your company said, "Oh, from now on, we're not going to pay you, but we expect you to work just as hard as you are. So raise your hand if you would continue working." Yes. You see? Nobody raised their hand. Right. So everybody's working for material gain. Even in the Vedic literature, for all sorts of religious performances, an allurement of material gain is offered. Yeah. At one time, years ago, when we had the little house here, we invited one of the priests. These were not paid priests. These were all volunteer guys that were living in America. And they were like the founders of the Bothell Temple. So one of the priests from the Bothell Temple came. He was a nice man. He was a Boeing engineer. And we were talking, and at one point he burst out, his eyes opened up and he burst out and said, "I have a mantra for anything you want." And then he showed me his book, it was a big thick book. "Whatever you want, I have a mantra." He started flipping the pages, "Here's one, here, pass the SAT test, I got a mantra for it," He kept flipping the pages, "Here's another one," He was proud of it. A mantra for anything you want. And it was a thick book, full of mantras. Yeah. So this is where we got to now, right? So if you go to church or synagogue or a Buddhist temple or a Hindu temple, they got some mantra for whatever you want. And if you go to a New Age guru, he's got mantras for whatever you want. And if you go to some New Age so-called inspirational guy or girl, they've got mantras for whatever you want. They've got solutions. In fact, I was listening to 1150 today for a short while. And I think it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And 1150 is this channel where you have all alternative. It's alternative radio. So this one lady, she was doing what you would call telepathic healing. So telepathic means from a distance. So people call up and say, "Well, I have this problem," and then she rearranges nature to solve the problem. I mean, is it comical? No, it's not comical. It's past being comical. It is like, unbelievable. And the people calling up from all over the United States saying, "Well, I got this problem, there's this smell in one part of my house. I don't know what it is. It could be a dead rat, or it could be, I don't know." So she said, "Oh, I see it right now. Okay, so I'm gonna encase it with which she didn't say a mantra, but some kind of mental telepathic order." So she said, "Now I got it surrounded." She said, "Can you feel that?" She said, "Yes, I can feel it," right? And now I'm going to get it to go through your kitchen door. She said, "How did you know it was near the kitchen?" "I can see it right now." It's not even comical. It's past being comical. It's like a complete con, right? But yet people are, they were calling up from all over the country so she could help them with some really pitiable, stupid problem, And she's talking about, "I got it surrounded now, and I'm going to get it out the kitchen door." So this is what this is what we've come to. Everything, you can't even say it's a joke. It could make you cry to see how people are so dumbed down to believe this type of stuff. Right? So, the general tendency of any ordinary man in any part of the world is to gain some material profit in exchange for religious or any other occupational service. Even in the Vedic literatures, for all sorts of religious performances, an allurement of material gain is offered. And most people are attracted by such allurements or blessings of religiosity. So this is the famous Archana. The Archana business. It's a good business. All you do is say, some mantra, what's your gotra, and this and that. You say a few mantras, throw some flowers here and there, and swaha, swaha, and you got the blessing. It's $21. You didn't spend one penny, right? It's not like you have to manufacture something and the cost price is this. You didn't do anything, and you get $21 or $121. There's this one guy in Kent. He charges thousands of dollars. He charges thousands of dollars in Kent, right? So, why are such so-called men of religion allured by material gain? Because material gain can enable one to fulfill desires, meaning material desires, which in turn satisfy sense gratification. This cycle of occupational engagements includes so-called religiosity, followed by material gain, and material gain followed by fulfillment of desire. This is Prabhupada. He's explaining it. Okay. Sense gratification is the general way for all sorts of fully occupied men. But in the statement of Sutta Goswami, as per the verdict of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is nullified by the present sloka. So, if we understand what Krishna is teaching us and what the acharyas are teaching us, sense gratification should be nullified. We should only use the senses to gather information how to serve Krishna better, so that we can all be liberated in this world of karma, of sinful acts, of following false prophets, and so forth, so that we don't waste any time. We don't have time to waste. We could die at any minute. Any minute now, Kim Jong-un could send a rocket to Seattle and blow us all up. If not him, Putin. If not him, then Maulana so-and-so from Iran. So it's not a joke. These things can happen. People are so passionate and angry now. It's very possible. See, war only happens when one country tries to dominate another, and especially economically. So right now, they have basically Trump has put the screws, or at least tomorrow he's going to put the screws on China, and he's already done it to Iran, right? And they're beginning to do it to Russia also. So that's very dangerous, because Germany went to war with England twice because England wouldn't let Germany sell to their colonial colonies. And Germany finally decided to go to war with England. They did it twice. Because it was basically because of economy. So, therefore, we should be serious, very serious, about using every minute in our life to become Krishna conscious and to spread Krishna consciousness, because nothing else could solve this problem. One should not engage himself in any sort of occupational service for material gain only, nor should material gain be utilized for sense gratification. So, does that mean you should not earn any money? No. It means that you have to regulate everything in your life, especially sense gratification, so that you can live comfortably, but without exorbitance, without unnecessary luxuries. But what are the luxuries? Like overeating. Now, if you go to Walmart or you go to Costco, you'll see people, they weigh like 300 pounds, walking like this. And they're filling up their shopping cart with all kinds of junk. That'll make them even fatter. Right? So there's an obesity epidemic in America. Have you ever heard about that? The obesity epidemic? Yeah. So, and Prabhupada once said, some of his sannyasis were, overweight like that. He said, one day he said that sannyasis should be thin. So this caused a little bit of a tremor in their minds. Why did Prabhupada say that? They're like this, right? So if you go to South India, especially, most of the Brahmins, they got that. They got the gold chain here, they got the gold ring and the gold bracelet, and and then here they have BMWs and Teslas and things like that. You know any Brahmins with a BMW in America? I know one in Portland. Anyway, here you see that material gain means you earn more than you need. And you put it away in the bank, and when you die, you have $10 million in the bank. So that's not a badge of honor. That's actually a badge of dishonor, because you could have done so much good with that money instead of just leaving it in the bank. So that's verse number 9. Verse number 10, Kamasyanendriya pritir labhu jivata yavata, jivasya tattva jigyasya, nato yascheha karma bihi. 1, 2, 10. Life's desire should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. Well, this is a pretty serious verse. Prabhupada says, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end for the materialist is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism, philanthropy, and ultimately in religion or even in salvation, the very same tint of sense gratification, in other words, in the very same idea of sense gratification, is ever increasingly predominant. In the political field, the leaders of men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. And not only that, they make all kinds of promises to the people for their improved sense gratification. Yesterday, Trump gave a speech in Florida. I couldn't believe it. He was promising the Floridians who had a lot of devastation due to some hurricanes billions of dollars for reconstruction, for this, for that. I mean, he was talking about, $400, $500 billion, $500 billion for reconstruction, promising them, right? So here we see that, and same thing for Puerto Rico, and same thing for this one, that one. So this is what politicians do. They promise sense gratification. Like in India now, in order to get Modi out, they're promising minimum wage. You don't have to work. You get a minimum wage. Everybody gets a minimum wage. By the way, a new economic paper just came out in America. It was in the news 2 days ago, that the guaranteed minimum wage for not working doesn't work. It doesn't improve the people's situation, So, and on the other hand, in India, they're guaranteeing now minimum wage for everyone. It's not a wage; it's a minimum stipend for everyone. You don't have to work. And other things. They're just promising. And Prabhupada says when their promises don't come true, then people get angry and they throw them out. So in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. No one is serious about the problems of life. What are the problems of life? Birth, death, old age, and disease. Even those who are on the path of salvation desire to become one with the absolute truth and desire to commit spiritual suicide for sense gratification. Now, he's talking about the Mayavadis. Why does he say commit spiritual suicide for sense gratification? It doesn't make sense, right? If you commit spiritual suicide, where's the sense gratification? The sense gratification is this. Let's say you think that the material world is anityam asukam lokam, a place that's temporary and full of misery. And so you will do anything to stop misery. Just like, someone went to the dentist and said, "Oh, doc, I got a terrible toothache, man. You got to do something. I'll never get a toothache again." He said, "Really? You never want a toothache again?" "Yeah, and I don't care what it is. Just do it." I said, "Okay." So he goes and gets a circular saw and comes back, cuts the head off. He'll never get a toothache again, at least not in that body. Now, that is exactly what the Mayavadis are promising you. If you become a Mayavadi, it'll ruin your material life, and when you attain so-called liberation, you'll be alone, and you'll be bored, and as soon as you have one little desire, you fall down again and start all over. Now, does that sound right? I mean, in order to achieve that position, you have to commit suicide. You have to stop your mind, stop interpersonal relationships, just end up in some dark cave in the Himalayas and meditate 24 hours a day. Can you do that, Prabhupada? You know how many people do that? You can count them on your fingers. In India, there's 1 billion people, and you can count on your fingers the number of people that do that. It's not like thousands and thousands. There might be thousands of yogis, but the ones that are sitting in the cave 24 hours a day meditating, very, very few. Very, very few. And they're getting fewer and fewer because after a little while they get bored and they go back down to Delhi and Hyderabad and, become some, man god. That they like. Man god, you get a lot of dakshina and all these things, right? Yeah, so the whole thing is spiritual suicide. The Bhagavatam says that one should not live for sense gratification. One should satisfy the senses only in as so much as required for self-preservation. Now, this is a very important point. More people have died by overeating than undereating. You see, so this overeating is not good, and more people have died by overindulgence in sense gratification. In fact, now this is a fact. We have things called vital fluids in the body. Vital fluids. If we waste them, women have them and men have them. It's not only men that have those vital fluids. Women also have those vital fluids. When those vital fluids are wasted, you are destroying the duration of your life. Not only you're destroying your intelligence, but you're also destroying the duration of your life. Those vital fluids are meant to be raised through the spinal column to the brain. Prabhupada has explained this. This is a yogic practice. Devotees don't have to practice it. It's simply following devotional service that'll happen, where those vital fluids go up. But all the karmis, all the sense gratifications, the vital fluids are going down and they're being wasted. And it subverts your lifespan, subverts your health, subverts your mental clarity. People sometimes say, Prabhu, you got some herb for memory? My memory's going bad. I don't know why, Yeah. You have to raise your vital fluids. Don't waste them. Then your memory will get much better. So, and actually, in the last class, we actually read this. Prabhupada was saying the importance of young boys and girls, practicing brahmachari life. And there he said, let me see if I can find it. If I don't find it now, I can send it to you. It was in a purport that we read, and he said that the children that follow these celibacy during their student years, their vital fluids rise up to their brain, and they develop almost perfect recall. In other words, they hear something once, they remember it the rest of their life. This was the training kids got early on, before there were computers and video games and television and so forth. Before that, they were taught to be celibate and to memorize and to listen effectively. And if they did this, they got really good at it. They could remember just by hearing once. They become shrutidar. Nowadays, they have attention deficit syndrome. How do you get attention deficit syndrome? It's by watching movies, especially MTV, where the picture changes every 3 seconds, or 1 second, or 2 seconds, or 3 seconds, or 5 seconds. That programs your brain not to focus. And because it changes so quickly, unless everything changes like that in your life, you get really bored and upset. You see, it programs the brain to not be able to focus. That's how dangerous these television, video games, and all these things are. And by the way, nowadays, I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. In order to get people to go into movie theaters and pay, $25, $30, $40 to watch a movie, they have to make the movies more violent, more nonsense than ever before. So all the movies made in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, they were a lot more less violent, less nonsense. in it. But now, you can watch those movies on Netflix or all these television or internet channels, the older movies. So the newer movies have to be much more violent, much more engaged with illicit activities, and for the people that want to go and watch it and pay $30, $40 to watch it. You see? And the same thing with Bollywood movies. Before Bollywood movies, they all had good themes and they were uplifting, and the whole family could watch it. Now, it's no, don't watch this movie. You go in your room and we have to watch this movie, because Bollywood movies, Bollywood, Hollywood, it's almost the same thing. They have to be more violent, more sense gratification, more glorifications of it, more gangsters, more villains, more demons, and so forth. So, this satisfy the senses only in so much as required for self-preservation. That is an important point. And actually, you don't need too much in your life to protect your self-preservation. And Prabhupada said, a young man or a young boy cannot eat enough, and an old man cannot eat too little. So the older you get, the less you should eat, right? And the younger you are, you should eat more, because you're more active and you're growing and so forth. But as you get older, you should reduce the quantity that you eat. I knew one man, he was a billionaire. He had a scale, and every time he would sit down to eat, he would weigh the food. He had calibrated. He knew exactly how much the dish weighed, and he would just weigh the food. He wouldn't eat more than 1 pound a day of food, because he wanted to live as long as possible, because he was a billionaire. He didn't want to waste one moment of his life getting old and sick. So there are people that are like rigidly regulated like that, but for sense gratification. Like Napoleon only slept 2 hours a night, and he had 20 secretaries that would stand around him, and he'd be giving them orders. He'd wait. He was so excited, he didn't even want to sleep. He got so excited, conquering, being a general and having a big army. And he would wake up, and the secretaries had to be around him. He'd be, send this message to our troops in Russia. Send this message to Poland. Send it, And Prabhupada talks about it. Now, if Napoleon only slept two hours a night because of his excitement of dominating and controlling people and countries and things, but on the other hand, the Goswamis, they hardly slept half an hour a day. They weren't excited about conquering, they were excited about Krishna. So you see, we don't know what our potential is. People say, oh, you have to get your sleep. You get this bed, and you get this pillow, and you'll sleep, you'll get 8 to 10 hours of good sleep, But Baba, that's wasting time. You can get yourself regulated to reducing, let's say 5 hours, 6 hours, then 5 hours, then 4 hours. You can, if you're regulated, you can do it. That gives you more time for chanting and hearing Bhagavatam. Don't think you can't do it. See, that's the whole point. They want to convince you, just like they have the food triangle, right? So right at the top, right, they have, maybe some vegetables or something. And at the bottom, they have the meat, right? Because meat is yang, and the top is yin, right? So, and every, like I was reading this one nutritionist suggestion for a healthy diet, right? So that you can heal your sickness with your diet, right? So they say, you have to have green vegetables, and you have to have some nuts, and you need a fish for, that's lunch, and then for dinner you have a breast of chicken, with defatted, and Yeah. And you have to have some garlic, and you have to, the whole thing was nonsense. How are you going to be healthy eating those things? The fish, the chicken, and then they say lean meat, lean beef. So the whole thing is a con. It's not true. But yet they're nutritionists, they have PhDs and so forth. The senses are not meant for unrestricted enjoyment. There are regulative directions for satisfaction of such senses. Seekers of the Absolute Truth are never allured by unnecessary engagements in sense gratification, because the serious students seeking the Absolute Truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. I pray to become overwhelmed with the enthusiasm and excitement of searching the truth. We all should pray for that. Just like, you ever see people going to the casino? They're excited. They can't wait to get in. Huh? They're not. No. They're going with the expectation of winning money. The casinos are advertising right now. If you go to the Tulala casino, they're going to give away $80,000 in 1 week. 80,000. They're giving it away. So how much do you think they're going to get in order to give away $80,000? Just imagine, right? At least 10 to 20 times more. But people they're focused on the $80,000. Huh? Yeah. So, in every sphere of life, therefore, the ultimate end must be seeking after the Absolute Truth. And that sort of engagement will make one happy, because he will be less engaged in varieties of sense gratification. So, whatever begins like nectar and ends up like misery is happiness in the mode of passion. So, that's really what happens in life. It all begins with, I'm going to be so happy if I do this. I'll buy a timeshare, and we can go and have a vacation there in Colorado, And then every year they start getting, all the bills for the timeshare, and they don't even have time to go. They're so busy, different things. And then suddenly they realize they made a terrible mistake, and then they can't get out of the timeshare. You can't get out of it for 25 years. Then they think, I said that was a mistake. I'll never make a mistake like that again. Then someone calls them up and says, Prabhu, you got to buy Standard Steel stock. It's way undervalued. He said, really? Yeah, it's a hot tip. My brother used to do this. He always used to go to church and tell people what stock to buy. and he said, I'm sure it's going up. I'm sure it's going up. Don't tell anyone. They would tell everyone, right? They would all buy it, and they'd all lose their money. Finally, no one believed my brother anymore. But after they lost a lot of money. Right? So this is what's going on in society today. If you read the New York Times, you'll see there's one full page of people that are going to jail and being sued, and they're usually stockbrokers. There's a whole page of them. They defrauded their clients. They used their money and for their own vacations and everything. Jai Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. Okay, now we're on verse 11. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yaj ganamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti sabhyate. So this verse says, learned transcendentalists who know the Absolute Truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So this is an extremely important verse. There's a very long purport to it, and it's very philosophical. So there are three stages of knowing the Absolute Truth: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So the Mayavadis used to say there's only Brahman, they're cheating you. You see, there's much more beyond Brahman. And they're saying there's nothing beyond it. This is how pernicious and mean and nasty they are. They claim there's nothing beyond. This whole Vaikuntha, this whole thing, Golok, it's all mythology. There's only Brahman. It's called Kevala Advaita. This whole philosophy is cheating. It's misleading people. And it makes them more convinced to engage in sense gratification, because they say the material world is illusion. It doesn't really exist. So if it's an illusion, I can play with it as much as I want, as long as I meditate and merge into Brahman at the end. You see? So many of these impersonalists are great sense gratifiers. Right? They're getting caught all the time. There's Nityananda got caught, and Asa Ram Babu got caught, and this one got caught. Every week a new one is getting caught, right? Murder, illicit activities with women, this thing, that thing. And it's nothing new. There's the story of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There was one mystic yogi, and he was performing Rasa Leela with virgin young girls. The people would bring their girls to him so he could perform Rasa Leela with them. And this is 120 years ago. Just imagine how long this nonsense has been going on in India, right, with the man gods. So the absolute truth is both subject and object, and there's no qualitative difference there. Therefore, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan are qualitatively one and the same. So this, whenever it says, Prabhupada talks about Brahman realization, it means Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. That is the real Brahman realization. And when the Mayavadis say Brahman realization, they're talking about just the Brahma Jyoti, is nothing else. You see? So don't get confused. Sometimes there are verses, it sounds like it's a Mayavadi verse in the Bhagavad Gita. It's not. Because whenever they say Brahman, they mean the three stages of realization of Krishna. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of the Upanishads, as localized Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and as Bhagavan by the devotees. In other words, Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead, is the last word of the absolute truth. So when it says the same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman or Paramatma or Bhagavan, what is that substance? That is Krishna. Because everything is emanating from Krishna. Janmadasya yata nivayadi taratas chartesu abhigya swarat. So everything is coming from Krishna. So you're talking, whether you're talking about Brahman or Paramatma or Bhagavan, you're talking about Krishna. Whereas the Mayavadis want to convince you there's no Krishna in this equation. There's just energy called Brahman. That's God. See, it's the ultimate cheating. That's why Prabhupada, his pranam mantra is, it says, Nirvishesha sunyavadi paschatya desatarine. That he specifically has come to the Western world to destroy the impersonalism Buddhist type or impersonalism Mayavadi type. Personally, that's his mission in life, because these two things are ruining people's lives, misleading them. The same. Okay, so Paramatma is the partial representation of the personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman is the glowing effulgence of the personality of Godhead, as the sun rays are to the sun god. And those who are perfect seers of absolute truth know well that the above three features in one absolute truth are different perspective views seen from different angles of vision. So, if you have 4 blind men and they encounter an elephant, one grabs the tail and says, "It's a little snake." The other one grabs the leg and says, No, you don't know what you're talking about. It's a tree." Another one grabs the ear and says, "No, you guys, both of you are crazy. It's a bird." Another one grabs the trunk and said, No, you don't know what you're talking about. It's a branch of a tree." They're all holding on to the elephant, and they have 3 different points of view, or 4 different points of view of what it is. You see. So here he says that all 3 features, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, of the one absolute truth are different perspective views seen from different angles of vision. The supreme truth is self-sufficient, cognizant, and free from the illusion of relativity. This is a very important point. Everything in the material world is claimed to be relative. And there's no absolute. This is what your kids are being taught. This is what everyone is being taught today. Everything is relative. No, that's not true. There is an absolute. That's the spiritual world. That's Krishna. And Krishna is self-sufficient. So everyone said, oh, we got to become self-sufficient. But nature is already self-sufficient. In fact, this Saturday I'm going to present a first scientific Krishna conscious lesson for kids. And we're going to go through a series. This week we're only going to do the carbon cycle. We're going to go through a series of cycles in nature that guarantee that nature is self-sufficient. And we begin with a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. It's a science in the Bhagavad Gita. And we explain the science behind that verse. Okay, Prabhupada said all the research has been done, but the correct interpretation has not been given. Okay, so the Supreme Truth is self-sufficient, cognizant, meaning all-knowing, and free from the illusion of relativity. Relativity is an illusion. Everything is actually absolute. But it requires a lot of knowledge to understand that. In the relative world, the knower is different from the known. In the absolute truth, both the knower and the known are one and the same thing. That's why it says the illusion of relativity. I'm not going to explain this in depth right now, but that requires a whole explanation. But it's good that there's an introduction to it here. The absolute truth, both the knower and the known are one and the same. And he discussed this already in the first verse of the Bhagavatam. He discussed this whole point more in depth. In the relative world, the knower is the living spirit or superior energy, whereas the known is the inert matter or inferior energy. Therefore, there's a duality of inferior and superior energy, whereas in the absolute realm, both the knower and the known are the same superior energy. So in the material world, you have this duality. You have a temporary material body and an eternal soul. And it's confusing. So it's so confusing that the Christians, the Muslims, and the Jews, they say, no, the soul and the body are the same. Did you look it up, spirit and soul? What's it say?
Soul is more like mind.
Yeah.
Spirit is nothing
Like the soul. Okay. So, see, this is what's confusing. When you do comparative study of religions, here the Christians are saying the soul is the mind, and the spirit is the soul. That's why Prabhupada says spirit, soul. Sometimes he says, doesn't say just soul, he says spirit, soul. You know, that'll confuse, that'll attract the Christians. Oh, that's our philosophy. But no, it's not. He says spirit, soul, because the soul is pure spirit. It's not the mind, right? So you see how it's confusing when you have comparative religions. Most people don't see those things, but when you go deeply into it, you see they use the same word, but it has a different meaning in their religion. It's the same with the Mayavadis and Krishna consciousness. They use the same word. And the Buddhists also use the Sanskrit words, but they have a different understanding of it. So it becomes very confused. Some people, it's the same religion, they're talking about karma. But they have there are different understandings of karma between the religions. There are three kinds of energies that are supreme energetic. There is no difference between the energy and the energetic. So that is a major theme. Prabhupada is always bringing this up. But there is a difference of quality of energies. The absolute, because there's three types of energies. There's the internal energy, marginal energy, and the external energy. And they act differently. Right? The absolute realm and the living entities are of the same superior energy, but the material world is inferior energy. The living being in contact with the inferior energy is illusioned. So every day in the material world we fall into illusion, another illusion. Vote for so-and-so, everything will be all right. Illusion. Buy this supplement, all your problems will be finished. It's an illusion, right? Do chemotherapy, the cancer will go away. It's an illusion, right? Invest in this stock, it's going to go up. It's the next Amazon. It's an illusion, you know. All these things are illusory, right? They build it up so much that you want it to be true, and you don't want it, and you refuse to say that it's not true. Right? That's when they got you. That's when Maya has got you. Right? The living being in contact with the inferior energy is illusion, thinking he belongs to the inferior energy. Therefore, there is a sense of relativity in the material world by this identification with the material energy. So all the Christians, all the Muslims, all the Jews, theoretically they're all an illusion because they're identifying the soul with the body. There's a bodily concept of the soul. That's why they have cemeteries. The cemetery is to preserve the body. So when Jesus Christ or the Mahdi or the Messiah comes, they all are resurrected from the dead, and there's a final judgment. Some people go to hell and some people go to heaven. But you need to have that body. They're against cremation. Cremating a body is anathema in the three Abrahamic religions, because there's definitely a bodily correlation to the soul. Verse number 12. We're almost finished. Touch Shradadanak Munayo Jnana Vairagyam Yuktaya Pasyanti Atmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shrutagrihitaya. The seriously inquisitive student, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes the absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. So Prabhupada says the absolute truth is realized in full by the process of devotional service to the Lord, Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, who is the full-fledged absolute truth. So you can only do it through devotional service. Bhaktya mam abhijananti yavanyas chasmi tatprata tatumam tatputo gyatva vishite tad anantaram. Bhagavad Gita 1856. Right? You can only approach Krishna through devotional service. And the devotional service has to be performed according to Shastric instructions of the Acharyas and ultimately Krishna. By the way, it's Narada Muni who first brought the Srimad Bhagavatam into this world. Did you know that? Yeah. Brahma, he heard, he wrote Brahma Samhita, he heard the flute, and he learned how to create progress the material creation. But it's Narada that first brought the Bhagavatam. So the absolute truth is realized by the process of devotional service to the Lord, Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, who is full-fledged absolute truth. Brahman is his transcendental bodily effulgence. Paramatma is his partial representation. Brahman or Paramatma realization, absolute truth, is but partial realization. It's not complete. There are 4 different types of human beings: the karmis, the jnanis, the yogis, and the devotees. The karmis are materialistic, whereas the other 3 are transcendental. The first-class transcendentalists are the devotees, who have realized the Supreme Person. The second-class transcendentalists are those who have partially realized the plenary portion of the absolute truth person. That means those who realize Paramatma. And the third-class transcendentalists are those who barely realize the spiritual focus of the absolute person. So, those are the karma yogis. Karma yogi means you're performing good karma, but you're attached to the results. It could also refer to the mystic yogis who try and perfect mystic powers. They are transcendental because they have to control their senses and mind. They can reach such perfection as Durvasa Muni, where he can actually go and see Narayana, or he go see Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, which is the spiritual planet in the material world. And he can go anywhere in the material world. So it looks like he's a liberated soul, but actually he's not. He only has a very partial understanding of the truth. But he can do something that the demigods can't do. That's actually go and talk to Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. So jnana and yoga are imperfect means of realizing absolute truth. So the people who pursue jnana for jnana's sake and yoga for yoga's sake, they will not understand Krishna. Devotional service, which is based on the foreground of full knowledge, combined with detachment from material association, and which is fixed by the oral reception of the Vedanta Shruti, is the only perfect method by which the seriously inquisitive student can realize the absolute truth. You should memorize this phrase. And actually, this is also said in Bhagavad Gita. Devotional service should be based on the foreground of full knowledge. So, Krishna explains, Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sakritina rijana artha jigyasa artharti gyanicha paratarsabha. 4th chapter, what is it? So here he says there are different types of people that come to him. I'm sorry, it's in 7th chapter. So the first class person is, the first type of person is in distress. The second type of person is seeking riches. The third type of person is curious. The fourth type of person really wants to understand the absolute truth, right? So Krishna says here that of these, tesam jnani nityayukta eka bhaktir vasishyate priyo hi jnanino tyartam aham sacham mamapriya. Of these 4 types of people that come to him, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best. So that's what he says here. He says that the first class transcendentalists, that was verse 7th chapter, verse number 17. The first class transcendentalists are the devotees who, Jnana and yoga are imperfect means of realizing absolute truth. Devotional service, which is based on the foreground of full knowledge, combined with detachment from material association, and which is fixed by the oral reception of the Vedanta Shruti, meaning Srimad Bhagavatam, is the only perfect method by which the seriously inquisitive student can realize absolute truth. Then he says, Udara sarva eva iti jnani tvatmaiva me matam astitak sahi yukta atma mam evan utamam gatim. 7th chapter, verse 18. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, all the people that come to him, even they come with these material desires. But the one who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be the best. I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. So how do we do that? We must hear Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita every day. Use every spare moment we have to assimilate this knowledge. And it's not by academics, it's by being engaged in devotional service, starting early in the morning, coming to Mangal Arati, chanting our rounds, hearing class, Tulsi Arati, so forth, and then controlling our eating, being very regulated, coming back to the temple at night, having darshan, so forth, class, so forth, and thinking about Krishna. Even though we're doing our work and we have so many things to do, I have so many things to do also. You know, I'm a farmer, I have a business, family, temple, right? So everybody's got so many things to do. But we have to organize ourselves by being regulated to do our material duties and at the same time do our spiritual duties. And the utmost duty is to learn Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Gradually, not over. It took the sages 1,000 years. So it's not, there's no hurry-curry, fast food. There's no fast food. There's not Bhagavat Saptaha, 7 days hearing Bhagavatam. Prabhupada said this Bhagavat Saptaha is nonsense. Nobody learns anything. How can you learn something? It took them, the sages, 1,000 years. How are you going to learn it in 7 days? Unless you're someone like Parikshit Maharaj, but he was on, the last 7 days of his life, so he was not distracted by anything. The third class devotees are neophytes who have no knowledge and are not detached from material association, but who are simply attracted by the preliminary process of worshiping the deity in the temple are called material devotees. So, Prakritya bhaktas. Material devotees are more attached to material benefit than transcendental profit. In the second-class position, a devotee can see four principles in devotional line, namely the personality of Godhead, his devotees, the ignorant, and the envious. One has to raise himself at least to the stage of second-class devotee and thus become eligible to know the absolute truth. A third-class devotee, therefore, has to receive the instructions of devotional service from the authoritative sources of Bhagavata. The number one Bhagavata is the established personality of devotee, and the other Bhagavatam is the message of God. The third-class devotee, therefore, has to go to the personality of devotee in order to learn the instructions of devotional service. This is what Arjuna did. This is what we should do. Right? Such a personality of devotee is not a professional man who earns his livelihood by the business of Bhagavatam. So there's so many people earning their living with the business of Bhagavat Saptaha. You know, people come and they sit down and they can't wait till it gets to the 10th canto. Sometimes they skip the 9th canto, they just go to the 10th canto right away. Such a devotee must be a representative of Sukadeva Goswami and Sutta Goswami and must preach the cult of devotional service for the all-around benefit of all people. A neophyte devotee has very little taste for hearing from the authorities. That's true. Such a neophyte devotee makes a show of hearing from the professional man to satisfy his senses. So, that whole Bhagavad Saptaha is sense gratification. Wow. This sort of hearing and chanting has spoiled the whole thing. Oh yeah, I went to the Saptaha 7 years ago, you know. I'll never forget it. Can you remember one thing you heard? Oh, it was all about Krishna and Leela and Avatara. Can you say something about it? It was great. It was wonderful. Yeah, I'll never forget it. A bunch of nonsense. They didn't learn anything. It's just like this. Someone has a dog, and the dog licks his face, and he says, oh, he loves me so much. But the dog is thinking, oh, one day I will eat you. You see, you misinterpret completely. So you think, you know, people are rushing to the Saptaha, but it's for the sense gratification. It's not really for purification. Just like one time in Nellore, Prabhupada was staying at the home of this family. They were a little bit wealthy, and he had given them some lecture. And so, you know, 12 o'clock he woke up. He took rest at 10. At 12 he woke up and he started translating. And the husband and wife who owned the house, they came to his room, you know, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and they sat down in front of him. And Prabhupada said, yes? What is it? And he said, we've come to you, Swamiji, to hear about Radha and Krishna's transcendental loving affairs. Prabhupada says, I don't know anything. He said, what? No, you, of course you know. He said, no, I don't know. You'll have to go to someone else. He refused to talk to them. Why? Because they came for sense gratification. They didn't come to find out anything serious about Krishna. They came to, you know, titillate their senses. So this is not this is a serious subject. It's only meant for people who are going to sit down day after day and hear, not come and, you know, tell, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, we want to hear about the private pastimes of Radha and Krishna. The Prabhupada said, I don't know it. You have to go to someone else. The holy messages of Godhead, as inculcated in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, are undoubtedly transcendental subjects, but even though they are so, such transcendental matters are not to be received from the professional man, who spoils them in the serpent spoils, as the serpent spoils milk simply by the touch of his tongue. A sincere devotee must therefore be prepared to hear Vedic literature like the Upanishads, Vedanta, and other literatures left by the previous authorities or Goswamis for the benefit of his or her progress. Without hearing such literatures, one cannot make actual progress. And without hearing and following the instructions, the show of devotional service becomes worthless and therefore a sort of disturbance on the path of devotional service. Unless, therefore, devotional service is established on the principles of Shruti, Smriti, Purana, and Pancharatra authorities, the make-show of devotional service should at once be rejected. An unauthorized devotee should never be recognized as a pure devotee. By assimilation of such messages from the Vedic literatures, one can see the all-pervading localized aspect of the personality of Godhead within his own self constantly. This is called samadhi. So we'll stop right there because the next couple verses are extremely important, and there are 3 of them. So we'll stop on verse number 12. 13, 14, and 15. We'll begin next week. 13, 14, and 15, and a few more. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Sorry, it's running a little late. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? So I would like to say, do not be disheartened. Prabhupada is telling the truth, and he's challenging us to come up to the high standard that's expected of genuine devotees. He's not mincing his words. He's not trying to, he's not teaching Sahaj Yoga. You know, Sahaj means easy. You know, it's very easy, you know. There are no rules. They have very strict rules. But if you follow the rules, it becomes easy. And if you don't follow the rules, it's very difficult. So the secret is, come every day and hear. And then repeat what you have heard by going out on Sankirtan. Then you will learn very quickly and thoroughly the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Because you're going to be challenged on Sankirtan every time you go out. Haribol. All glories to Prabhupada.